Hey everyone, it's time for another live look at the astrology. My name is Katie Sweetman, and this is your look at the astrology for October 7th through 13th, 2024. So, how are we doing? I know that we've been talking a fair bit over the past few weeks about eclipse season, this season that comes every 6 months, but typically can represent turning points and shifts, maybe bring major events, and we can see how this time of the year can be an inflection point. The last time we had eclipses was April of 2024, so just 6 months ago. And here we are again. So we did have that solar eclipse last week, even though it's behind us, just 5 days behind us. It is still very much with us. So depending on who you are and what's going on in your life, maybe you're really feeling it. Maybe it's a bit intense. Maybe there's just a lot of things going on in your life that demand your attention. Maybe it's personal events, maybe it's personal milestones. And this is something that actually may be part of a bigger story. This is a story that even has its roots in April of 2023. So, yes, a year and a half ago, because that's when we had our first eclipse in Aries. And Aries and Libra, they form a pair. So, we've been having eclipses bounce back and forth between Aries and Libra over the last year and a half. We are starting to move into a different cycle that was signaled by our eclipse, I guess, 3 weeks ago in Pisces. And that tells us that in 2025 and even parts of 6, we will have eclipses in Pisces and Virgo. So different story, different cycle. And to the best of your ability, it is to sort of look for this theme, this story. I've spoken a little bit about this, but the importance of Libra, and you could argue that all signs are important. All 12 zodiac signs are important. They just have different roles. And the role of Libra is to teach us about how to connect, how to socialize, how to be amongst people, how to be in partnership, to create connection, to be in relationship, because it is ruled by Venus. And Venus is about civility, it's about manners, it's about, here, let me see what you need. And of course, we all have different relationships personally with these energies, but that's at the root and the heart of this sign. Libra is a cardinal sign. It aligns with the 4 directions, the 4 seasons. Here in the northern hemisphere, we had the start of autumn. I know in the southern hemisphere, you had the start of spring. And the cardinal signs are the 4 pillars of life. They hold up our lives. It says that relationship, in the case of Libra, is a key. We cannot live life alone, but everything in balance. And that's where Aries comes in. And Aries reminds us that we can't be so overly accommodating that we forget the needs of ourselves, to learn to stand up for ourselves, to stand up for our own 2 feet. So before I go into this week's astrology, if you are watching live, as always, do say hello, even if you're watching on the replay. This is on YouTube, it's on Spotify. What else is it on? Facebook, of course, and I do even put it on my website, empoweringastrology.com. And for those that do not know who I am, my name is Katie Sweetman. I'm an astrologer and psychic medium located here in the rolling hills of Maryland, at least for the time being. And every week we gather live to talk about the astrology. And you hear me say it every week, the astrology is 50%. You are the other 50%. You are living your own life. You have your own history. You have your own possibilities. And astrology is just a lens. It's an energy, and it's telling you what time it is. So how do you best make decisions, knowing that it's eclipse season, knowing that perhaps it is a time when things are a little bit bigger than us, a little bit bigger than the 50% that is ours. Then again, how do we react? How do we take care of ourselves? So yes, I know it's a lot. We will have points over the month, and this week is one of them, and even going into next month, and even into, I would say, the end of the year, we'll have these periodic check-ins with the eclipse energy. The solar eclipse that we had on October 2nd was at 10 degrees of Libra, and that creates like a mark in the sky, this point that is magnetic, it's alive, and it's a seed for future events. And the weird thing about eclipses is maybe we have already seen the eclipse. We saw the eclipse last month. We saw the eclipse in July, because that July in particular, end of June, beginning of July, was threading together the eclipses from April 8th, 2024 and October 2nd, 2023. And these are part of a series that take us back even to October of 2023, April of 2023, as I already mentioned. So this week we have the first quarter moon. This will be the moon that is 1 week after the solar eclipse. This is typically a 90-degree angle if we're looking at the technical stuff about astrology. And I've just noticed to pay attention to that first quarter moon, because it can be a point where we can see the manifestation of the eclipse. It can be, quote unquote, a crisis point. A crisis point, I realize that's a little bit of a bigger word, but something that demands a little bit more attention and action. This will be the 9th to 10th of October, when the moon is in Capricorn. We do have a couple of big movements this week. We have Jupiter turning retrograde at 21 degrees of Gemini, and we also have Pluto turning direct at 21 degrees of Capricorn. These, we need to talk about these two planets. They're very different planets. Jupiter talks about, I love Jupiter. In fact, I love all the planets. I love all the signs. But this is one of the things that I love about Jupiter. And this is to say this because when we learn about astrology, and very often what gets repeated about Jupiter is that it's the planet of growth, quote unquote growth. What does that mean? Or it's this lucky planet. And I think we really need to go a little bit more deeper into Jupiter. And Jupiter is, along with Saturn, these two planets, they talk about our world. They have much bigger cycles than, let's say, the personal planets, Mercury, Venus, Mars. Mercury can, has this 88-day cycle. Venus takes about a year to go through the zodiac. And then we all know, of course, the sun is a luminary, the moon is a luminary, and these have much shorter cycles. Jupiter takes 11 and a half, almost 12 years to go through the zodiac, spending about 1 year per sign. So it's been in Gemini since the end of May of 2023 or 2024. So what is that? I can't even do math. It's not that long. 4 months. So Jupiter is this planet that makes our world bigger. Imagine your life with zero curiosity. No desire to learn anything, no desire to try anything, no desire to make yourself better, to wonder, to question, to seek out maybe deeper truths and deeper wisdom and knowledge in your life. Do you grow? No, you don't. So Jupiter is this planet, this archetype, this energy that really motivates us and inspires us to look beyond ourselves. And for some, to look beyond ourselves is to go out to the world, literally, to get on a plane, to travel, to explore. Maybe it's education. Jupiter talks about higher education as the ruler of Sagittarius. Maybe to make our world bigger is to read, to learn, to take classes, to get a degree. And maybe to make our world bigger is to open up our eyes and sort of think about these bigger philosophical and even existential questions. Without that energy, our life would remain very small. So that's what it means when Jupiter is the quote-unquote planet of growth. I do think on some level that Jupiter bestows grace and maybe a little bit of luck. Maybe I'm just being a little bit too much of a Scorpio. But it is a planet that can inspire us to open doors, to maybe leave something behind, to start something new, to set sail, so to speak. A retrograde is not bad. I am saying this in case there's still that lingering mentality that direct planets are good, retrograde planets are bad. No. In the great tapestry of the cosmos, you see these two energies. You see the expansion, you see the contraction, you see the inhalation, you see the exhalation. And there's this constant movement, and I realize retrogrades planets aren't actually going backwards. But from the perspective of Earth, it does seem that all the planets, except for the sun, the moon, start to trace a reverse path in the sky. And that retrograde period can last 3 to 4 weeks, or in the case of Pluto, Uranus and Neptune, it can be about 5 months, so almost half the year. Jupiter is 4 months of retrograde, but all retrogrades are a time to integrate, to reflect. They are a yin phase to the direct yang phase, and thus is the duality of life. Think of it like this. If you just spent your time learning, but not actually integrating it and applying it, like, it doesn't stick in you. So Jupiter retrograde gives us a chance to sort of resurface some of the things that we've experienced and discovered and learned since about June. And then Jupiter, I believe it will turn direct in the beginning of 2025, if I remember correctly. But it's just something that we don't typically notice, because Jupiter talks about these bigger existential questions, faith, truth, meaning. And then Jupiter, I will add that it is turning retrograde in a square to Saturn. So this square to Saturn, Saturn is in Pisces presently. It's in 13 degrees of Pisces. This is part of an aspect pattern that's taking us into 2025. Saturn is the structure. Saturn is the making things, kind of the inhalation. It's the, the contraction. Saturn makes things real. We live in a physical world. We want things, we want the good things to be real at least. But Jupiter square Saturn talks about a need to make something real, whether it is to make a commitment, to make a decision, something about our direction, our path, something about what we believe in, what we stand for. So this adds to the energy of the eclipses that we've been navigating since last week. And so whatever is taking place, see how this week might push you to take a step up, to stand up for what you believe in, to demonstrate wisdom and knowledge, to honor your commitments and responsibilities. Jupiter does rule the eclipse in Pisces from September 17th, and in a way it's running a thread to these bigger questions about not just truth and meaning, but bigger existential questions. Why am I here? What am I doing? What does this all mean? Because Saturn is still in Pisces. It'll be in Pisces until the beginning of 2026. So we are all collectively, since 2023, asking ourselves big questions. It's a very interesting place for Saturn to be, and that's what's really getting kicked up as well. I know that Pisces can be a very emotional sign, getting into, it's not my emotions, it's a collective emotion, a collective experience. And of course, there are very big things going on in the world at the moment that, of course, would really push us to question and to search for answers the best that we can in our own way. So Jupiter turning retrograde at 21 degrees, it picks up on these bigger Piscean existential questions. And for some, especially if you're a Pisces, especially if you're a Virgo, and maybe even those that are Sagittarius and Gemini, there's this energy of concreteness, an energy where you need to demonstrate Saturnian energy. I'm accountable, I'm the authority, I know what I'm talking about, I'm making the right decisions, because that's what Saturn wants. Saturn wants us to make the best decisions. So that energy is playing out throughout this week, even though Jupiter turns retrograde on the 9th. It sort of adds to that first quarter moon energy that I was talking about on the 9th and the 10th of October. Then there's Pluto. And Pluto, and I've been talking about this off and on for a while, but here's the thing. Now, Pluto is a different planet than Jupiter. It's a different class of planet. Jupiter is an evolutionary planet. Jupiter has been in Capricorn since January of 2008. I know 2008 feels like 3 lifetimes ago, But, apart from a period in 2023 and even from January to September, January to September 1st of 2024, Pluto was in Aquarius. But we are going back to a phase and a chapter, and a very profound chapter that has been with us since January of 2008. Wherever Capricorn is in our life, it could be a career sign, Aries. It could be the sign of home and family, Libra. It could be health and wellness, Leo. These are just for examples. That area of your life may look profoundly different than it did in 2008. Because Pluto is an evolutionary planet, it demands evolution. And I know you hear me say the astrology is 50%, you're the other 50%. But you have to understand that there are forces that are greater than us. Of course, we can use them in a sort of personal growth and transformation way. We can illuminate ourselves. We can illuminate our lives. We can make these bigger transformations. And that's what Pluto has been doing. And sort of the analogy that I've been making, to my clients, especially those who have Capricorn in major placements in their astrology, it's like Pluto walked into the front doorstep of your life, or walked into this particular area of your life in January of 2008 and said, I'm here to rip everything out. And what commenced was a multi-year, decade and a half story of complete gut level transformation of that part of your life. Especially for my Capricorns, you may not even look the same. Your life may not look the same. It's been a pretty intense go over the last 16 years. Both Capricorn and Aquarius, where Pluto is going, these are Saturn-ruled signs, and Saturn talks about our world, the structures of our world, the systems of our world. So certainly we've been doing a lot of deep collective work since 2008. Pluto moves so slowly that one of the ways that you can sort of frame this time in your life was that this was the time that your soul needed to do this work. Because Pluto will not return to this point in the sky for another 250 years. Yes, that long, because Pluto takes 248 years to go around the sun. So it's like, this is, if you believe in this is the time that your soul needed. You incarnated to do this deeper work, to free something, to transmute something. This is a little bit more of an esoteric look at things. And then here we are for next 5 weeks, if I'm doing my math correctly, we're coming to that last stage, that last step. It's maybe this is a period, and especially a week, for us to ask ourselves, what have we learned? What has changed? What has transformed? Is it about money? Is it about power? What still needs that final tweak? And that's one of those things where sometimes it's not obvious. We really need to sort of sit and reflect, maybe meditate. But when we go through each of the 12 signs, I'll give you some keywords of what part of your life may look very different than it did in 2008. And of course you'd say, well, yeah, of course, lots would change in 16 years. But perhaps you will see what part of your life has irrevocably transformed. Pluto is power, it's structures, it's the bigger things in our life, not just on a collective level, but on a personal level. Capricorn is the sign of matter in the material world, and the landscape does not look the same. So that said, anytime a planet turns direct or retrograde, like Jupiter this week, like Pluto on October 11th, Friday, it will bring that archetype into the collective consciousness. We might see it obviously. We might be like, why do I feel all this stuff coming up? Why do I feel these emotions? Why am I thinking about matters of faith and what I believe in? Well, maybe, I don't know, maybe because Jupiter just turned retrograde. Maybe Pluto is really bringing up some deep stuff. Pluto's the plumber. Pluto's like the plumber for your soul. Not always easy, but and one of the analogies that I use for Pluto is that it holds a mirror. It holds a mirror to us. It holds a mirror to us collectively. And it's not always easy to look at ourselves. but we need to look at ourselves, even if it's just on a personal level, because much like I mentioned with Jupiter, if we had no curiosity, if we had no desire to grow and to go beyond ourselves, would we grow? Would we learn? Would we transform? Absolutely not. So whether you look at yourself through psychology, going to therapy, whether you do it through personal work, whether you use astrology to look at yourself, that's a necessary step that we all have to go through, because if we never look at ourselves, we absolutely 100% won't grow. So for some, Pluto has been like a complete tearing down and rebuilding. For others, Pluto has given you the power to make a real and lasting change, and perhaps even a necessary change. Pluto has empowered you. Pluto has helped you to find yourself, because you have taken that energy to look at yourself. So thus is the duality of life. So these are our big movements. Pluto will turn direct, as I said, on October 11th, Friday at 29 degrees of Capricorn. 29 degrees is the last degree of any sign. So Pluto was last at 29 degrees just this past January. But Pluto will never get back to 29 degrees in our lifetime. I know, it's kind of crazy to think that way. So there you go. So those are our big movements of this week. We're going to still feel the intensity of eclipse season. I would say look to, again, this first quarter moon, the 9th and the 10th of October. And then even next week, we have the Aries full moon. That could be a little spicy because Mars is in Cancer. And then also we have Venus opposite Uranus on Monday. So we're seeing these sort of different waves with the eclipses as we go throughout October. So having said that, let's look at the astrology for each of the 12 signs. Just your friendly reminder, you can listen for your sun sign, you can listen for your rising sign, you can listen for both and get the information, hopefully, that is relevant for you. So let's start with Aries. Aries. So Mars is your planet. It's still in Cancer. So this continues to be a time that is a focus on home and family, past memory, roots. Am I safe? Do I have enough? Because Cancer is a very primal sign. It needs to feel safe. It needs to be held. Maybe it's literally about family for you right now. Maybe you are making changes in your home and your household. And Mars was kind of in this rodeo with the eclipse that we had on October 2nd. So we do see that solar eclipse last week in your sign of relationships, whether that's literally about the relationships in your life or about how you connect and interact and socialize with people, how you allow yourself to be vulnerable, for example. Jupiter turning retrograde in Gemini, it does talk more about learning and information, needing to go back to something that you've learned, needing to reintegrate it, to go back to your notes, to take classes, so see how that's relevant in your life. Then there's Pluto. Pluto is a big deal because Pluto has been in your career sign since January of 2008. Now, every Aries or Aries rising will have lived this time differently because we don't live the same life, but there's typically some common experiences or a common theme. For some Aries, Aries rising, this has been a time to completely tear down and transform and rebuild your professional life, your relationship with power and control, and even your public life, because Capricorn is your public life. For some Aries, this has been a time about finding your power, to be able to stand on your own 2 feet, to sort of reach for your ambitions, and even to take on more power in your professional life. Maybe you've gotten more involved in the world, for example. Maybe it's not so literal, Pluto's influence, but it has transformed your relationship with ambition. It has transformed your relationship with responsibilities and duties. These are just some common examples. Pluto having returned to this space, this would have been September 1st. This is somehow going back to a very old story, 16 years old. So if for you in your own time, Aries, try to find, like, what has this been in your life? Where have you seen your professional life change? Where have you seen your relationship with duty and responsibility and even power transform over the last 16 years? Because as we go into the next 6 weeks, this is that time to really bring that chapter of your life to a close, because Pluto will never be back here in your lifetime. Taurus. So Venus is your planet, and it's still in Scorpio. So a lot of the emphasis in your astrology at the moment is on relationships. So it's a little bit more of a fleeting, I say fleeting because Venus is only in Scorpio for a few weeks. But this is that natural time to socialize more, to connect more, and maybe to have to negotiate and navigate the needs, other people's needs. And how do you figure out your needs in the midst of other people's needs? We just had this solar eclipse in Libra. Libra is a sign of health and wellness. So it's to see, like, what is beginning to come up for you. How is that related to a story that's been with you since 2023 about your health, your wellness, how you take care of your body, how you organize your day, your daily duties and responsibilities. That said, Jupiter turning retrograde for you is maybe about money. Maybe it's about investments or spending, or maybe you received money. I know I'm just sort of thinking of a Taurus on the top of my head, which I know received an inheritance, but money and property and assets that you want to invest, that you want to create more wealth and stability in your life. Of course, that's not going to be relevant for every Taurus, but Jupiter in this space can also just talk about value and worth on a general level. Taurus is a sign that is by its nature about money and the material world, and so Jupiter has made you have a desire to expand this part of your life, because Gemini is your second sign of money and income, and in however way that is relevant, maybe you've been spending more, maybe you need to put that with the Saturn square, you need to sort of look at how you've been spending money. But I would say that it doesn't mean that you can't make an investment over the next few months. But I think with the square to Saturn, just do your paperwork, do your research, do your due diligence, just to make sure everything is where it needs to be. That said, Pluto did turn retrograde, turn direct in Capricorn. It will do so later this week on the 11th. And this is wrapping up a 16-year chapter that has focused on, this is the thing, it's a little bit different from Taurus to Taurus, but what do you believe in? What do you stand for? What's your truth? Capricorn is your 9th sign, and the 9th sign, it like Jupiter, it makes our world bigger. For some Tauruses, there has been a big focus in the last 16 years about education. Whether you are trying to get a degree, whether you went back to school, whether you're trying to educate yourself about the world, whether it's not literal education, it's like really trying to learn about the world and maybe more travel. And for some Tauruses, it's about philosophy, faith, truth, meaning, conviction, and a sense of right and wrong. And so for Taurus, it's for you to see, like, how big was your world in 2008? How big is your world right now? What did you think was true, or how did you see yourself in the world 2008 versus now? Maybe you can see a story that's very true and relevant to you. Maybe you gotta search for a little bit, but the ninth sign for anybody, it's not a concrete sign, because philosophy is not concrete. It's a guiding force. It's a vision. It's how you see the world. And that's something that has needed to do a lot of deep work since 2008. Gemini, so you have had a visitor to your sign, or Gemini rising, since the end of May of 2024. and that planet is Jupiter. So on some level, Gemini, you have been at the beginning of a big cycle, because Jupiter works in these 12-year cycles. And so Jupiter in Gemini has perhaps given you confidence, has perhaps put some wind in your sails, and you have been ready to set out on a new adventure. Jupiter on some level is also trying to make your life bigger. And so making your life bigger is to inspire you, to motivate you, to give you curiosity. So now that Jupiter is turning retrograde, you have 4 months to really rework the things that you have set in motion, the things that you have learned, so that you can really integrate them more deeply into your life. I think I already said this, but Jupiter can give confidence, sometimes a little bit too much confidence, and sometimes Jupiter can physically make you bigger, in case this is actually relevant. But that said, Jupiter is in a square to Saturn, and I'm just wanting to highlight that because with Gemini, it's just, there's a lot of things that are being asked of you right now. Saturn typically, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? Saturn is also saying you need to be accountable. You need to make the right decisions. You need to honor your commitments and responsibilities. So that's kind of in the mix as well as Jupiter turns retrograde. Then there is Pluto. Pluto went into Capricorn in January of 2008. So something that I said in my introduction. And I wanted to go back to that time because Pluto went into something that I call the 8th room. Everybody has 12 signs. Even if you have a sun sign, you have all 12 signs. And Capricorn represents your 8th sign. So it really depends. Of course, everybody is different. But Pluto went into a sign that really talks about the deepest parts of yourself. It is your psyche. It is the parts of you that are in your sort of unconscious, subconscious, and it's also a part of you that can talk about power and control. It can also talk about vulnerability and intimacy and trust. So something has been happening over the last 16 years where you have been, in a way, excavating something within yourself. Maybe the past 16 years have been a profound time of inner growth and personal transformation. Maybe you did a lot of healing work. Maybe you did a lot of therapy. Maybe you opened up to spaces within yourself because you were ready to look at them. Because Pluto, kind of in the archetype of the god of the underworld, leads us into these undiscovered parts of ourselves so that they can be revealed and that they can be transformed. With Pluto straddling your 9th, there is an element of what have you learned? After everything that has happened, what is still true? What do you believe in? And what is your faith? So this has been, since September 1st, a time to really revisit a lot of the emotional and psychic work that you have been doing over the last decade plus. If you still feel, especially with Pluto turning direct this week, that there's a lot of emotions bubbling up, the question is, how do you anchor yourself? How do you sort of my thing about the 8th is that nobody's supposed to do the 8th alone. We need people to hold our hands. We need people to hold space. So just make sure that you have people in your life, God willing, that are going to help you to hold space this week for anything, if at all, that is starting to come up emotionally. And then when Pluto leaves on November 19th, it is gone, at least from the 8th, for good. Cancer. So the moon is your planet, and we just had an eclipse. So how are you doing in Cancer? Did it bring up a lot of emotions? It was in Libra, and Libra is your sign of home and families. That's where a lot of the focus is, and maybe that's bringing a change in your living situation, a change in your household, something about family over the next 6 months. You had an eclipse here back in October of 2023, so this is just continuing a story that you're very likely already familiar with. Then there's Pluto. So Pluto, which I wanted to focus more than Jupiter turning retrograde this week, because Pluto has been in Capricorn. It went back into Capricorn from September 1st, and it will finally leave on November 19th. Although that's just a couple of months, in reality, Pluto first went into Capricorn in January of 2008. At this point in my astrology career, I've talked to a lot of clients. I've heard a lot of stories. And of course, you're all different Cancer or Cancer risings. But there's typically been a bigger story around relationship and connection over the last 16 years. It means different things to different Cancers. But over the last 16 years, you've had to do a deep psychic work and transformation on how you connect to people. The people that come into your life, whether they are a friend, whether they are a lover or an intimate partner or somebody, the sort of general social dynamics. Because Pluto has said, for whatever reason, that this has been time to do this work. In your own time, and maybe you're already mapping it out, what's the relationship story? I've seen people get married, Pluto goes into Capricorn, get divorced, Pluto goes into Capricorn. I've seen people make profound personal transformation and have growth around relationship in this space. So here we are, because Pluto will not get back to Capricorn in your lifetime. I know, because Pluto takes 250 years to go around the zodiac. So the work that you have been doing, and I think it's important to say this, the work that you've been doing over the last 16 years is the time that your soul needed to do this work. So take note of what's coming up this week. The stories, the emotions, the echoes, things around family, things around power, things around trust. Because on some level, because Pluto has been opposing you, especially if you are a Cancer sun, this has been a time for you to discover who you are and to discover your power by stripping away anything that's not you. Leo, so the sun is your planet, and right now the sun's in Libra, and Libra is your third sign. So this is typically a busy season for you, whether that's a lot of calls, a lot of texts, a lot of movement, a lot of errands, a lot of busyness, a lot of restlessness. But Libra is a time for you also to focus on relationship and connection and really having some social movement in your life. We just had that eclipse last week, and you, because you are the sun, because sun rules Leo, got eclipse. So how are you feeling? Just a little check-in, of course. But we do have some movements this week. We have the Jupiter turning retrograde on on the 9th of October. And it's turning retrograde in something called your 11th sign. So there is something about friends, community, your social circle, the groups that you're a part of. Over the last 4 months, if I'm doing my math correctly, this has been a time where there's been a desire to grow your social circle. With the square to Saturn this year, it's especially the second half of this year, these need to be real connections. These need to be connections that actually support you for the future. And with Saturn in your 8th, there's been trying to find a deeper connection or a deeper intimacy in friendship that might be something that's coming up. And even, do I trust my friends, or all these people are just sort of coming in and out of my life? But then there's Pluto, and Pluto, it's turning direct on October 11th in something called your 6th sign. And it went into your 6th sign of Capricorn all the way back in January of 2008. Now, every Leo is different, whether you are Leo or Leo rising, but the 6 is about our day-to-day life. What do you mean our day-to-day life? Well, we get up, we brush our teeth, we take the dog out, we do this is our routine, but these are the systems that make our life run. These are our daily duties and responsibilities. This is our work and even a sense of service to other people. So Pluto has been transforming this part of your life since 2008, and in some cases profoundly so. The 6 is also about health and wellness and your relationship with your body. We all need to take care of our body. We need health and hygiene. We need proper sleep. And how has your relationship with your body changed over the last 16 years. Maybe you started going to the gym. Maybe you started cutting certain things out because they weren't good for you. They weren't supporting your health and wellness. Maybe you quit smoking or quit an addiction during this time. But it's for you to go back and to appreciate the profound psychic work that you've been doing, even though it's about the physicality of your life and even the physicality of your body. Because sometimes, for some Leos, part of the work has to truly inhabit your body, not just to be in your head or sort of floating in and out. Pluto has really given you the power to make that big transformation. So you find your anchor, your root, and your grounding. So see what's coming up this week, and maybe you will see how it's part of a bigger story around health and wellness that has been with you for the last 16 years. Virgo. So Mercury is your planet, and Mercury is still in Libra, but by the end of this week, it will go into, it will go into Scorpio. And this is something that we'll talk more about next week. But Libra is all about relationships and connection. It's social, it's airy, it's movement. But for you also, it's about money and income, because Libra is your second sign. Whether that's literally the income that you pull in and the money that you spend, or even bigger questions about value and worth. Mercury, when it goes into Scorpio later this week on Sunday, it does start to pull into this sign that's like the researcher. Scorpio is trying to get to the bottom of mystery. It's really sharp. It doesn't pull its punches. It sort of says things very bluntly. Libra is a little bit more of a diplomat, so it'd be interesting to see how you feel a shift when when Mercury goes into Scorpio on Sunday. That said, Jupiter is a major planet in your astrology. It is both a planet that talks about relationships. It's also a planet that talks about your household and your home environment. So Jupiter turning retrograde, especially in that square to Saturn, says that there's something about this week, maybe it's next week as well, where maybe there are more responsibilities that are being asked of you. Maybe you feel like you have the weight of the world on your shoulders. Maybe you're seeing personal milestones in relationships or your home environment. Maybe you're moving. It's a little bit of a big time to be a Virgo rising. A lot of emphasis on relationships at the moment. Who are the people that are in your life? Are these serious relationships? Do you need to work on relationships? So Jupiter turning retrograde in your sign of career gets into these bigger themes about your life. So it's sort of hitting on all four corners this week. You, other people, your career, your home environment, and you might feel like this week is a pivot point, and possibly when Mercury goes into Scorpio, especially next week, you need to really get deep about the decisions that you're making and weighing your options, because when Mercury eventually gets into Sagittarius, probably in November, that's when it's time for some real decisions to be made. Libra. So happy birthday, Libra. I know I said this last week, but if your birthday was on the eclipse of October 2nd, plus or minus a few days, the coming year is going to be big in some way. I think it was 2005 that we last had an eclipse, October 3rd, 2005 in Libra, so very close to that date. It's just something to go back and reflect on, but it just means it's somehow a big new beginning for you. If it is not your birthday, it does bring this dynamic energy into your life, and I feel like I say this every week. I can go off a list in my head of Libra rising friends and clients, and you got big things going on in your life. You got moves, you got relationship stuff, you got births, you got this, you got career stuff. So it's just a very dynamic time to be a Libra or Libra rising. The seed that was planted October 2nd with the eclipse will continue to echo out the next few months, but for you, at least in the immediate, to see what is going on this week, particularly around that first quarter moon on October 9th and 10th. It could be a pivot point, it could be a need for decisions, and maybe you just feel there's a lot on your plate at the moment. And if that's the case, make sure you're taking good care of yourself and you're staying rooted and grounded. Venus, your planet, it's still in Scorpio, so it's sort of getting into these questions around trust and emotionality and vulnerability, money and power, investments. Venus is also going to make a pretty spicy opposition to Uranus on Monday, so a week from now. So I'm just saying this in case you're feeling this real sort of build up of something, but the Venus-Uranus opposition demands a transformation. It demands an awakening. It demands doing things differently. And it's just for you to see how this is relevant in your life. That said, Libra, Pluto turning direct this week on October 11th is a big deal because it's bringing to a close a chapter that has been with you since 2008, January 2008. Pluto is turning direct in your sign of home and family. So it's for you to go back and reflect on the deep psychic and emotional work that you have done around family, around the past, around mom and dad, around ancestors since the last 16 years, because Pluto will leave Capricorn on November 19th, and you will wrap up this part of your life, for example. So what have you learned? What has changed? What has transformed? We're not completely done. So it's still that time to really let something go, and especially if you've been holding onto it from the past. Scorpio. So Mars is your planet, and Mars is presently in Cancer. And Cancer for you is your sign of exploring the world. It's faith, it's truth, it's teaching, it's sharing your wisdom and knowledge. It's a very philosophical place for Mars to be. Mars will be here until the beginning of November, so this continues to be a theme for the next month. That said, you were a little bit in the mix with this eclipse. Maybe it felt intense, maybe it felt emotional, but Libra for you is your 12th sign, and 12th, and that's where we have the eclipse on October 2nd. And the 12th can be a very spiritual place, but it can also be a place where you need to rest, you need to pull back the veil, you need to look deep within, look into your hidden spots. But the 12th also brings in these bigger existential questions. Why am I here? What's the meaning and purpose of my life? And especially with that square to Mars and Cancer, that this is a week about getting very clear about what your core philosophy is. Of course, that can change, that can transform, but I think it's also a week to have a very strong sense of like a guiding direction or a guiding star. And even how do you share that? Because the 9th, where you are at the moment, even into the rest of the year, these are very public parts of your astrology chart. So as much as the 12th is something hidden, it's time for you to share something. Having said that, Pluto is turning direct this week on October 11th. And while I use traditional rulers, Pluto is the modern ruler of Scorpio. And I just wanted to highlight that because Pluto turning direct highlights the deep psychic work of transformation that you've been doing around voice and communication since 2008. You could say, Scorpio, that the last 16 years have been a big work for you to find your voice, for you to pull back, almost like calling the plumber, the psychic plumbers, anything that's in the way of you speaking, sharing, really getting into the deeper parts of who you are and to find the power of your voice. Now, this, of course, will be different for different Scorpios, but really take appreciation for the work to use the next 5-6 weeks to really find the true power of your voice after all the work that you've done. Sagittarius, Jupiter is your planet and it's turning retrograde this week. Don't worry, retrogrades are not bad. A retrograde just gives you time to catch your breath. The next 4 months are a time to integrate. Now, what I've noticed, and maybe you are a different Sag or Sag rising, is that Gemini is a very busy place for Jupiter to be. Maybe it has just been nonstop since the end of May, beginning of June, and you really could use the time to catch your breath. Gemini is a relationship sign. There is something about you that's being highlighted this week, about relationships being highlighted this week, around career, around home and family. And especially because Jupiter is square Saturn, this might be a week where you need to get real about something, to get serious about something, make a serious decision. And to be fair, with Jupiter retrograde, whatever decision that you're making, it doesn't mean that you're going to walk back on it, but there's still this process of things still playing out into January. You possibly don't have all the information yet. Saturn also is retrograde until the middle of November. So I would just sort of use the next few months to really assess your options, to relook at relationships, to go back to the experiences that you had in June and July and August and September. That said, Pluto turning direct, it starts to finish out a major chapter in your life that has talked about money, income, material stability, and security, and value and worth. Pluto has been in your money sign since January of 2008. Yes, January 2008. So there's something that's been going on, Sagittarius or Sagittarius rising. Whether it is about to change your relationship with money or material stability and security. Mind you, we're all human beings. We need a roof over our head. We need money in the bank. We need food in the kitchen. These are the basics and staples of life. Maybe you've needed to completely change your relationship with money because you need to look at the past relationships. Maybe this is about what you inherited from your family, your ancestors, to create to material stability and security, to create wealth, or to know your value and worth. It's going to be different for different Sagittarius and Sagittarius rising. But that said, we've got some of the I can't speak, energy of the eclipses. That energy put the spotlight on groups and community, your friends, your social circle, and maybe changes around friendship in your community, and maybe even things that really open up you towards the future. Maybe these are rippling out into this week, and you will see some major decisions about group and community and connection this week. Sorry, sometimes there's people that come on in and ask for them to DM for readings. So yes, these are just spammers, so just report them if you're watching live. Yes, because I can see. Anyway, Capricorn, Saturn is your planet, and Saturn, as you know, it's been in Pisces since March of 2023. Even though these eclipses weren't highlighting Saturn per se, you could argue that the one on September 17th was highlighting Saturn. It was talking about education, learning, voice, communication. But really, this eclipse that was last week on October 2nd was a big one. So the eclipse on October 2nd highlighted both career. Now, this might be literally about career for some Capricorns or Capricorn risings. It could be about your public life, because Capricorn, Libra for you represents the most public, the highest place in your personal astrology. Maybe it's about your relationship with duty and responsibility. Whatever is going on, it's been unfolding since last year. You first had your eclipse in Libra on October 14th of 2023. So you're at a little bit of a crossroads right now, Saturn, and even though, I was thinking about you because with Jupiter turning retrograde this week, it's pulling at you. And it does get into these bigger questions because Gemini is service for you. It's health and wellness. It's that need to create a sense of discipline and, discipline and like scheduling and practice and craft. And so with Jupiter turning retrograde this week, it's pulling you into the mix. This might be a week where you need to take a step up. You need to get very clear about your duties and responsibilities, your ambitions, how you use your voice, how you weigh your options. maybe even this theme around education that's been very prominent in your astrology since last year, and maybe get very serious about something. With the energy of Jupiter, it is highlighting your health and wellness, and so maybe Jupiter is sort of at your side. It's inspiring and motivate you to make positive changes in your health and wellness. But that said, this continues to be a larger period in your life where Pisces as a lens for you, because you are ruled by Saturn, is a little bit of an interesting placement for you to be for 3 years, because it's not really about the physical world right now. Even though, ironically, we just had an eclipse in your professional life, it is more about, meaning and substance and choosing the things that actually fulfill your life instead of just ticking a box. Aquarius. Aquarius. So Saturn is your planet, and Saturn is still in Pisces, as you know, and it will be in Pisces until the beginning of 2026. So this part of your life is very much about your material life. And I know I talk about this every week, but the question is for you, Aquarius, is that how is this showing up in your life? Is this literally about the things that you own and the things that you're spending money on? Is this about investments? Is this about value and worth? Are you really looking at the money that you have, maybe the money that you don't have, and trying to create new systems to really build your material life? For example, sorry, I don't know my voice. So Saturn, this part of your chart, is trying to really get your material life in order. And so maybe this is a good time to check in, because you did have that eclipse in Pisces on September 17th. Something may have to change in this part of your life, even if it's around self-worth and value, even if it's around reframing your relationship with stability and security. We just had this eclipse in Libra, and Libra for you is something called your fifth. Wait, is that right? Libra is for you your ninth sign. The ninth sign is a sign that really makes our world bigger. It wants us to look outside of ourselves. It wants us to explore. It wants us to travel. And so this eclipse will ripple out over the next few weeks, but maybe you are making plans to travel the world. Maybe you are making plans to just sort of open up your horizons. And for some Aquariuses, it is about philosophy. It's about faith, truth, and meaning. For some Aquariuses, it's about education, and for some Aquariuses, it's about really sharing what you believe in. Maybe you're publishing a book, maybe you're doing a talk. But that's where that eclipse energy was concentrated, but it was also pushing its energy over into your career, because Scorpio is your career sign. And so this might be a time when you really need to take something seriously. You need to make a commitment. You need to make sure your professional life is in alignment with your inner compass, your personal sense of what's right and wrong, for example. Jupiter turning retrograde, it does highlight a space in your chart that has been about creativity. This continues to be, even into 2025, a time for you to take yourself and take your talent seriously, especially with that Jupiter turning square to Saturn. Use this use this energy this week to really create a project, to do something creative, or to do something that's very self-affirming. Pisces. Last but not least, Pisces. So Pisces, Jupiter is your planet, and it turns retrograde today. Not today, this week, October 9th. And this happens once a year, so no big deal. And a retrograde gives you time to catch your breath. So Jupiter will be retrograde for 4 months. This will take us into the new year. And Jupiter turning retrograde in Gemini says that it's time to retrace our path, to walk back in a part of our chart that talks about home, family, roots, foundation. Maybe you've seen a lot of growth, a desire for something more, a lot of movement in this part of your life since May of this year, since end of May of this year. With the square to Saturn, and I will say Saturn, having been in Pisces since March of 2023, continues to be a little bit of a heavy influence. It's what I like to say, it's capital L life. It's capital L life for Pisces. Capital L life means a lot is being asked of you. It's not like really low level day-to-day stuff. It's about life. It's about responsibilities. It's about family. It's about relationships. It's about you. And for some Pisces rising, and even maybe about health, your personal health. There's a lot on your shoulders at the moment. You have to be the leader. You have to be the person that's driving the ship or steering the ship. But whatever is happening in the home environment, it sort of goes into these bigger themes about your life and sort of the bigger things that are happening. Mercury is a major planet in your astrology, and this eclipse wasn't about you, the eclipse last week at least. You did have that lunar eclipse in Pisces 3 weeks ago, but that solar eclipse last week, October 2nd, in what's called your 8th sign, it did highlight you. So this may continue to be a very emotional time. Am I safe? Do I have enough? Can I do this? And maybe having to face yourself, as you go through this week. So this is activating a lot of things. I will add finally that Pluto turning direct on October 11th. This is Pluto's last go through your 11th sign of friends and community. You've had to do a deep psychic work on the people that you call friends, the community that you have, and really to rehaul and transform this part of your life, and maybe even to open up and find your place or find your community in your life. So there you go. That is your look at the astrology for October 7th through 13th, 2024. My name is Katie Sweetman, and this has been your look. This has been Empowering Astrology. I appreciate you all. I will see you all next week. You can follow me online at empoweringastrology.com. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Spotify. You can book a consultation with me. I know I see some clients each week on the live chat, but I know even you all say, oh yeah, I watch you every week. So that said, I will see you all next week. Take care. Bye-bye.